how much I appreciate your leadership as you've filled this role during this tumultuous period in international relations. I have to say, since you've taken this position, the interaction our office has had with members of the Department of State and with you individually has really markedly improved, and so I'm appreciative of that. One of the axioms of diplomatic or military strategy is that you want to unite your allies and divide your enemies. And as I see it, this is one of the things that Vladimir Putin has been succeeding in doing. He seeks to divide and weaken NATO, for example. He wants to divide the American people. And the more we make Russia's meddling in our own elections a partisan issue, I think the more we play into Putin's hands. The intelligence community has been clear and consistent. Russia did indeed meddle in our elections. So I think we need to stand together as Americans, not as Republicans or Democrats, with respect to this issue. What are your thoughts on this matter, Mr. Secretary?
Senator, I think it is the case that the Soviet Union and now Russia's efforts to undermine Western democracy are long and continuous. I think they occurred in 2016. I am confident that the Russians are endeavoring to divide, to separate us from our allies, to create space, to find partners for themselves around the world, in the same way that we will go out and work diligently with our allies. I always think that having a United States, folks who come at these problems with seriousness and thoughtfulness towards a shared goal, increases the likelihood of America prevailing in these challenges, against these challenges.
Well, I happen to agree with you, and I hope that my colleagues and I will adopt a tone and approach to this very serious issue, which impacts all Americans, in recognition of everything you just said. So, Mr. Secretary, just about an hour ago, President Trump convened a joint press conference with the President of the European Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker. And in the press conference, the President and both of the Presidents announced they were going to launch a bilateral U.S.-EU set of negotiations with the goal of reducing tariffs, increasing economic cooperation between the EU and the United States, and working together to counter the predatory economic practices that we've seen from countries like China. I can't tell you how encouraged I am by this. I think with our collective leverage brought to bear, perhaps even ultimately pulling in other G7 countries like the Japanese, we have a real possibility of reducing the intellectual property theft, reducing the incidence of joint technology, forced technology transfer, of state-owned enterprises dumping things into our own economy, precisely the sorts of objectives I know the administration has. So do you agree that the United States moving forward has to prioritize a trade dialogue with the EU in order to eliminate current retaliatory tariffs on farmers and manufacturers in places like Indiana, as well as to effectively combat China's nefarious activities?
Yes, don't forget Kansas farmers too. So I don't have the benefit of having seen the press conference. I was sitting here. I didn't see the announcement or what they said. I know this was one of the things that President Trump was trying to accomplish in his conversations with Mr. Juncker. It sounds like they made at least some progress in that regard. Look, the President has been clear with respect to trade policy. Europeans won't accept our agriculture products. There are other markets that are close to us. He is endeavoring to get them opened. He is trying to drive towards 0-0-0, right? Zero tariffs, zero non-tariff barriers, zero subsidies. That's the place he's trying to get the whole world, and he is confident that when we get there, Americans will outcompete the rest of the world. And whether it's manufacturers or innovators or farmers or all of the above, they'll ultimately be very successful, and there'll be enormous wealth creation, not only in the States, but elsewhere as well.
Well, I'll just add that I find this effort of working cooperatively with the EU and other major economies as coherent and workable if we're trying to really address the greatest challenges, which is those seen by the state capitalist countries, China being the worst offender. I don't have as much clarity with respect to our trade strategy as I'd like to. It's one of the reasons that I keep emphasizing I think we need to actually have a written one, just as we do a national security strategy. But very appreciative of President Trump's announcement today. Lastly, Mr. Secretary, I'd like to call to your attention that my home state of Indiana is home to 23,000 Burmese Americans. And as I travel the state and listen to so many of my constituents that are Burmese Americans, they reiterate to me three things. Number one, they express grave concern regarding the Burmese military's atrocities against the Rohingya, and they want to see those perpetrators brought to justice. Number two, they reiterate a desire to expand people-to-people ties between Burma and the United States. And thirdly, they express concern regarding the treatment of Chin Christians in Burma. Now, I note that you're hosting this week the Ministerial to Advance Religious Freedom focused on combating religious persecution and discrimination. And as we appropriately address within that forum the Rohingya crisis, I'd just ask the department to continue to also make clear to the Burmese government that all religious minorities, including Christians, should be respected. So, Mr. Secretary, will the Department of State work with my office to not only continue our joint efforts related to the Rohingya, which I support, but also to encourage the Burmese government to end any policies whatsoever that treat Christians as second-class citizens?
Yes, Senator, we will.
Thank you.